This story is inspired by real events from the life of Harriet Jacobs, an enslaved African-American woman whose courage, intelligence, and will to survive defied the cruelty of her time. Written as part of the Voices of Freedom historical storytelling series, this episode sheds light on a chapter of history often forgotten. The story of a woman who refused to surrender her soul even when the world gave her no way out. Her name deserves to be remembered, not as a victim but as a symbol of unbreakable human strength. Imagine a world where even the sound of your breath could give you away, where freedom is a dream so distant it feels like another life, and survival means learning how to disappear. In the early 1800s, in the heart of the American South, a young woman named Harriet Jacobs learned what it meant to be both invisible and unstoppable. Born into slavery, Harriet's earliest memories were not of play or laughter, but of whispered warnings and heavy footsteps on creaking floors. Yet, even as a child, there was a spark in her, a defiance that no whip could break. She watched her mother's eyes full of quiet resistance, and she learned something powerful: that freedom was worth everything, even your life. Harriet grew up under the constant shadow of her enslaver, a man named Dr. Flint, whose cruelty knew no limit. He saw her not as human, but as property, a body he could command, a spirit he believed he could own. But Harriet had something far more dangerous than fear. She had hope. She dreamed of escape, not just for herself, but for the children she would one day bear. That hope became her weapon, her secret rebellion in a world that thrived on breaking souls. When she was still young, Dr. Flint began to pursue her relentlessly, his obsession growing darker by the day. He threatened her, humiliated her, and made her life a constant nightmare. Harriet realized there was only one way to fight him. She had to outsmart him. She entered into a secret relationship with another man, a white lawyer who promised to buy her freedom. For a moment she thought she had found a path out of her suffering, but the lawyer's promises crumbled like ash, and soon Harriet found herself trapped again, now with 2 young children to protect. The world around her was a cage: the plantation, the town, the very laws of the country. Every path led back to her master. So she did something extraordinary. She vanished. Not into the woods, not across the river, but into a space so small it could barely hold a human body. In 1835, Harriet Jacobs crawled into a crawl space above her grandmother's shed. A dark, airless attic barely 9 feet long, 7 feet wide, and only 3 feet high. There were no windows, just a few holes she drilled herself to let in air and to glimpse her children playing below. That space became her prison and her sanctuary. For 7 years. 7 years of silence. 7 years of hunger, sickness, loneliness, and pain that would have crushed anyone else. At night, rats scurried near her, insects bit her skin, and the heat was unbearable. In the winter, the cold froze her to the bone. She couldn't stand upright, couldn't walk freely, couldn't speak to her children, though she could hear their laughter and cries from the yard below. Sometimes she'd see them pass under her hiding place, and tears would fill her eyes. She wanted to call out, to hold them, to tell them she was still there, but she couldn't risk it, because freedom was not yet safe. And so she waited. Every day Dr. Flint searched for her, furious that his property had vanished. He placed ads, offered rewards, sent slave catchers north, and spread lies. Yet he never thought to look inside that tiny attic, just feet from where she had once lived. The irony was cruel and poetic. She was so close yet completely untouchable. Her grandmother, a free black woman named Molly, was her secret guardian, sneaking food to her and keeping her existence hidden from the world. For years, Harriet's body weakened. Her limbs stiffened, her muscles atrophied, her eyesight dimmed, but her mind grew sharper. In the dark, she plotted, she listened, she dreamed. From that suffocating space, she wrote letters and secretly sent them to the North, tricking Dr. Flint into believing she had escaped far away. Every letter was a blow to his pride, every word a small victory. She was teaching herself that power didn't always come from strength. Sometimes it came from patience, endurance, and cunning. 7 years later, when her opportunity finally came, she seized it. With the help of friends and the Underground Railroad network, Harriet escaped to the North, hidden aboard a ship bound for Philadelphia and then to New York. When she stepped off that ship, breathing open air for the first time in 7 years, she was not just free, she was reborn. But freedom in the North was fragile. The Fugitive Slave Act meant she could still be captured and returned. So Harriet continued to live cautiously until her employer, a kind woman named Mrs. Bruce, finally purchased her freedom legally. For the first time in her life, Harriet Jacobs was no one's property. Yet instead of hiding from her past, she faced it. In 1861, she published her story, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, under a pseudonym, revealing to the world what it truly meant to be an enslaved woman in America. Her words shook the conscience of a nation. They spoke of courage, motherhood, endurance, and the quiet rebellion of a woman who had every reason to give up, but never did. Her story wasn't about chains or masters. It was about the will to live free, to love her children enough to disappear so they could one day stand in the sunlight. The attic where she hid became a symbol, not of fear, but of faith, a place where a woman transformed her suffering into strength. She showed the world that freedom isn't just about escaping a place, it's about refusing to surrender your soul, no matter how small your world becomes. Harriet Jacobs lived the rest of her life quietly, helping freed slaves and teaching children after the Civil War, but her legacy lived far beyond her years. Today, when we speak of heroes of freedom, we often mention men who led armies or wrote laws. But sometimes the bravest battles are fought in silence, in the dark, in secret, by those the world never saw. Harriet's fight lasted 7 years in the shadows, but her victory has echoed for centuries. And if you listen closely, you can still hear her voice, soft, steady, unbroken, whispering through time. I was born a slave, but I never forgot that I was a human being. That whisper is her legacy, a reminder that even in the smallest spaces, the human spirit can still find a way to stand tall.